I have somehow found myself up here again for some reason. But yes, I'm heading up the worship series right now, and I think for me, I've been doing worship, leading worship a long time, and so I think, although I've been doing that, I still feel like, do I have enough authority or experience to speak into this? But we shall see. Yeah, I think for us, we are created to worship God. You know, that's one of our biggest purposes in life, and something we really should aim towards is to worship God. And like I said, like, what is it? What are we doing? But for me, when I was thinking about what I would talk about, I have been really interested in biblical history and have been looking into it for several years now, and it's something that really excites me, and I talk about it a lot. And so I think I really wanted to delve into that, especially into the tabernacle. So I think if I look back at my past, I have had many conversations with my dad about biblical context and biblical history, and so many arguments with him, maybe more so as a teenager. I used to have the perspective, no, like, if God gives me a Bible verse and that's it, then that's what he's speaking to me. And he always used to be adamant, like, no, it's so much better with biblical context. And I fervently disagree with him. But as like most things in my life that I've recently realised, my dad is right. And I feel like I'm slowly becoming more and more like him, which I don't know if that's a good thing. But a lot of his ideas and thoughts that he has have really impacted me. So it's Father's Day, isn't it, as well? Oh yeah, okay. Good, happy Father's Day, Dad. Yes, I'm becoming more like you, it's good. So yes, I think I've been wanting to talk about the tabernacle. These are my thoughts when I was brainstorming, and something I think we'll delve into today is, what did worship look like in the time of the tabernacle? What foundational values and truths can we integrate from the tabernacle into our own worship? And now that we can worship in spirit and truth, because we are now in the New Testament, why is it important to look back on the tabernacle and its effect on us today? So that's kind of my thoughts, I think. And I want to be clear when I'm talking about historical context. When I was looking at it, I was like, why am I talking about it? Why am I talking about historical context? I think that by looking at it, especially the lives of the Israelites, we can really see a mirror of ourselves in how they were oppressed and they were enslaved. It may be in a different way, it may be enslaved in the spirit, but you know, and then God has freed us, and from him freeing us, how did we then walk with him? And so I think by looking at ourselves in the historical context, I think is really powerful. Yes. So I guess to look back at the historical,
we've got some arrivals. Let them pass through the red
space birthday, isn't it?
I had a sleepover.
It's next week, I think. So it's your birthday next week.
Yeah, but I had a sleepover.
Yes, you did.
A long one, by the
So yes, so looking back at the historical context, we're going to look at the ancient Near East times. So that's what it was called, ancient Near East. Specifically in that time, it was surrounded by the worship of hundreds of gods. And I think the that was what impacted their life. So many daily rituals, everything was surrounded by that. Their worldview was very spiritual, where ours can be a bit more logical and especially in modern times, trying to, okay, this is the cause, this is that, but everything was interconnected. The heavenly realm was connected with the underworld. Everything had its purpose and meaning. I think now we worship many gods as well, except I think maybe a little bit more subtle. Their worship was very, some of it very disturbing, especially in like Babylonians, just very, not good, the way that they worshipped. I think a lot of the ideas of the gods that the ancient Near East people worshipped it was very conditional, very, very conditional. There were gods that were controlling the natural phenomenon, craft, and different species, whether it's plant or animal. And so what they would do is they would worship, and then in return for their like specific worship, they would hope to get something in return. So it was very like, there was no unconditional love there, just very, very purely conditional. They feared the gods, they feared them, that they were really unpredictable and temperamental and provoking. So it was very fear-based and just lost, I think, is the best way to think about it. And specifically in Egypt, there was like 2,000 gods, like over 2,000 gods that they worshipped. So many daily rituals that they had, so many offerings and festivals connected with the Egyptians, and they had so many temples as well. So I think if we look at the Israelites' point of view, they grew up, in that place, surrounded by the worship of so many gods. I think they had heard of Yahweh through their forefathers, the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but because over time they slowly began to become oppressed and maybe part of their culture had been pushed down and squandered in the way that they learnt about Yahweh. A good amount of this was what they had known, and so when we look at when Yahweh really makes his name known, he makes it very, very clear. And he makes it very clear, especially by all the plagues that he sends out to the Egyptians, but also makes it himself clear to the Israelites as well. There's so many passages that say, like, I am going to send these plagues out so that you know that I am Lord, so that you know that I am God. And each plague is very specific to main Egyptian gods. So he was really calling them out and almost mocking their power and authority, and really showing his own power and authority. And so I think the Israelites would have had the question when they were freed, like, okay, well, who is this God? How do we worship him? All I know is this. And so we come into the Mount Sinai, where the tabernacle was built. And I think you can look at the Old Testament. I think there's lots of comments about the Old Testament God being mean and cruel. But if you really look at the context, like, he's really been very helpful in laying out the law at that time. He's trying to teach them what healthy living looks like. I think because those boundary lines really, like, I think when you look back at it, he's teaching them health, he's teaching them about connection, how to be in relationship with one another. He's teaching them how to worship and what holiness looks like, and making it very, very, very clear. And so, I think that's really, really important, just to kind of give a basis on understanding that the Israelites really did not know how to worship God, and they did not know how to walk with Him. And I think we can relate to that as well. At least I can. And so, what was the tabernacle? Basically, the tabernacle is the meaning of it is dwelling place or residence. In the more practical term, it was a constructed portable tent where the presence of God dwelled, and he came down in a pillar of fire and in a cloud, and that was his sanctuary. He dwelled amongst the Israelites and protected them, guided them, taught them as they grew in their community in the wilderness. And this is the tabernacle here, and then you have the Levitical priests, or the Levites around here, and then each tribe surrounding, all facing towards the tabernacle, which is really important. And I don't know if
all tents, those little.
Yeah, all little tents.
Okay.
And so I think that, I mean, this is the best picture I saw. Some say there's some theories about it looking like a cross, and it's like dun 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 dun. But this is a good picture. So I thought this was quite a good way to show it. I think there's also, I put on here another thing. This is my thought. If you could put the tabernacle. This is the tabernacle. I think you can become overly religious with the kind of pattern that I'm going to be talking about, because, well, I definitely became overly religious. I had lots of teachings in YWAM about worship, and it was very strict almost. When you come into intercession, you have to do this, and then you'll be ready to pray and intercede. And then if you do this, then you'll be ready to worship. So I think, just to be clear, I'm not saying take this and this is the way that you have to worship. It's not. But I think it's a really beautiful process. And I think you can really look at it in a big picture that, like I said previously, being freed like the Israelites, and now we're learning to walk with God, and it's a continual process, a journey of our sanctification into the holy place. And I think that's also what happened with the, what are they called? Jesus and the
Disciples?
No, not the disciples. The Pharisees. Yeah, there we go. I was thinking pharmaceutical in my mind. The pharmaceuticals. I don't know. The Pharisees, they took the law and they became so strict with it, and it constricted relationship. It constricted love, and that is not part of. That's not what worship is about. That's not what connection, relationship is about. So, but this is just like a pattern that you can think about walking in the tabernacle. Now, we have the gate, we have the bronze altar, the golden laver. So the bronze altar is where they sacrificed, the golden laver where they worship, where they wash their hands, and then you enter into the the holy place, where it had the golden lampstand, the altar of incense, and the table of showbread. And then the most holy place, the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat were. And only the Israelites could enter into the courtyard, the outer courtyard, and make their sacrifices. The priests could only enter the holy place, where they made their daily rituals, and then only the high priest could enter into the Holy of Holies, only but once a year, to mediate on behalf of the Israelite sins. So that's kind of the journey heading into the most holy place, and the different steps you walk along. Okay, so the next one. So, we enter by the gate. The only way you could enter the tabernacle is through the gate. There was no other way to come into it. And so, it's very, very clear that Jesus shares that he is the gate, he is the door. He shares that in John. And he, like, the only way to the Father is through him. The only way to salvation is through him. And I always think about this whenever I come into worship, or whenever I'm feeling really bummy, like I'm just really not great, is through thanksgiving and praise. It says in the Psalm 100 verse 4, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. I think worship has become very introspective in modern times. I think there's a place for that, for us to meet personally with God and look inwards. But there is something powerful about coming into worship, thanking God for what he's done and praising him for who he is, because it takes our eyes of ourselves, takes our focus off of the things that we're struggling with and we're going through, not to neglect them and not to make them any less valid, but when we come into worship, it's so good when we focus on God, because it puts everything into perspective. Like when we are thankful, it's like, oh wow, like I'm still really struggling with this, but God is good. All these things have blessed me, and I have these provisions. So I think it really helps to put things into perspective and get the focus onto God. And so we entered through the gate, and then we reached the bronze altar, where they sacrificed lambs and bulls, and for the sins of the people. Now they had to do that because you're approaching a holy God, and the sin that they had, it could not meet a holy God. And so there was this separation, that the only way really that they could for a time kind of stop that separation, I don't know, is through the sacrifice of bulls and lambs. But Jesus was the sacrificial lamb, is the sacrificial lamb, and through his sacrifice we are no longer separated, and our sin is no longer a barrier between God and us, and we can approach him with boldness and confidence. Yes, when we come to confess.
Did you write that line? You can approach him with boldness and confidence.
I didn't, it's in the Bible, but I put it in there.
She copied and pasted it.
It is in the Bible, that we can, when, I think it's a specific passage in Hebrews where we wouldn't be able to approach him because of our sin. Now we can approach him with boldness and confidence, knowing that Jesus has sacrificed for our sin, and although we still sin, that's washed clean and he welcomes us. So yes, and we don't have to all the time when we come into worship, we don't have to focus on our sin all the time. It's, God's got his arms wrapped around you. It's he looks past that into who you are. So the next is the laver, where they washed their hands and their feet. There's so many different connections to the washing of the hands and the feet. I could go on about Jesus's connection to washing feet, and I really want to talk about it, but I won't, because it's a tangent. But the priests washed their hands and their feet before entering to the holy place, to make sure that they were clean. I think, and there's a real connection. Every single step here is a real connection to Jesus. Jesus fulfilling absolutely everything. So Jesus washes us clean and has washed us clean, and we can walk towards Him. So I think my thought about that is like, wow, yay, rejoice and be glad. This is like brilliant. We don't have to every single time we approach Him. We don't have to wash our feet, wash our hands. Yes, so now we've gone past the outer courtyard, we enter into the holy place, where we have the golden lampstand, the table of showbread, and the altar of incense. It's very beautiful, actually. The golden lampstand was kind of crafted like a tree. So it's got these beautiful branches, and on the ends it's like lovely flowers, and so very, very lovely. And so God's very detailed in His creation. But the golden lampstand, one important part about it is that it could never go out. So the priests had to constantly go in and change over the candles, making sure that it was always lit. When I thought about that, I thought about putting a photo up of a candle being like always lit. Did anyone get
Wow.
I was like, no. But I thought against it. I was like, that's very Gen Z of me. You know? So, yeah. But Jesus is the light, and the darkness cannot overcome the light. The light, the golden lampstand, was the only source of light in the holy place. The table of showbread is basically, there are so many different thoughts about it, but there's 12 leavened pieces of bread, and it really represents God's presence and His fellowship. Well, He is the bread of life. You can also go into communion. How powerful the unleavened, the leavened sections of the Bible are. Anyway, doesn't matter. And the altar of incense as well, really our prayer and our intercession. I think these, when I thought about them, I was like, how does this relate to worship? But I think each step we take we walk closer to the presence of God, and our worship becomes more intimate. So every aspect of, being in God's fellowship, in His presence, taking of the bread, taking of communion, praying for other people, interceding, like, it can really make our worship deeper and stronger. It's not just about singing, it's about this daily devotional life of communing and praying for people. I think that's a really important part of worship that we it's hard to kind of focus on each part of the day, but yes. And then we enter into the Holy of Holies, the most holy place, where we have a precious encounter. And only the high priest can enter there and enter into the Holy of Holies. Jesus is our high priest. He is the ultimate mediator, the final mediator to come in on behalf of the Israelites, on behalf of us, to God. And obviously there's a very specific verse when Jesus dies. It says the veil is torn. So that separation between us and God is no longer there, and we can enter into the most holy place through Jesus, and we can walk boldly into His throne. I think looking at that structure through worship and I think as we come in, I don't think it's like imperative that we look at all those aspects when we worship on a Sunday morning. But I do think it's like, if you're feeling, it's very interesting you're saying, if you're feeling kind of almost like downtrodden, dead inside, like I don't want to worship, I don't want to, this doesn't feel, I don't feel like it. It's to look at these different points, like, you know, have I been thankful? Have I been praising God today at all? You know, do I know that I'm forgiven? Like, do I know that I'm washed clean? I think looking at those can really help us to kind of connect with God, when before, like, we may have been just kind of drowning in our own stuff. It really helps to become more intimate with Him. And where's the next one? So this is like, oh, that's bright. This is kind of the journey of intimacy that we can grow into with God when we worship. And I think one really important part for me is that I think the best way to grow in worship is to get to know God more. It's your relationship with Him, investing in that. I think the worshipping is just like, you know, a branch off of that. Like, when we focus and really be intentional in learning about God and His nature, and spending time in the Bible and speaking with Him daily, I think that ultimately affects our worship. We grow in intimacy with Him anyways. I think it's for me, it's a journey. Worship is a massive journey. It's a process, and I think that's the main thing that I see in the tabernacle, in the way that the Israelites were learning to walk with God, because I think God's love is unconditional, unlike all the other gods that we may or choose to worship. Other than Him, His love is unconditional. You know, we can approach Him now through looking at the pattern of the tabernacle and the way that Jesus has completely fulfilled all of it, and He's the ultimate tabernacle. You know, through Him, knowing that the veil is torn and there is no more separation, we can really enter into the presence of God. And I think it's so important for us to recognise that that's only because of Jesus. It's only because of what He's done that we can worship in spirit and truth. And now, like, we've become the tabernacle. We've become the dwelling place of God. And so, and it's only because of His sacrifice and what He's done for us. And I think just for the last bit, I think a passage of the Bible that really encapsulates all of what I was talking about is in Hebrews, and I'll just read it. Now, it's in Hebrews 9, by the way. Now, even the first covenant had regulations for worship and an earthly place of holiness. For a tent was prepared, the first section in which were the lampstand and the table and the bread of the presence. It is called the holy place. Behind the second curtain was a second section called the most holy place, having the golden altar of incense and the ark of the covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden urn holding the manna, and Aaron's staff that budded, and the tables of the covenant. Above it were the cherubim of glory, overshadowing the mercy seat. Of these things we cannot now speak in detail. These preparations have thus been made. The priests go regularly into the first section, performing their ritual duties, but into the second only the high priest goes, and he but once a year, and not without taking blood which he offers for himself and for the unintentional sins of the people. By this, the Holy Spirit indicates that the way into the holy places is not yet opened, as long as the first section is still standing, which is symbolic for the present age. According to this arrangement, gifts and sacrifices are offered that cannot perfect the conscience of the worshipper, but deal only with food and drink and various washings, regulations for the body imposed until the time of Reformation. But when Christ appeared as a high priest of the good things that have come, then through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, he entered once for all and into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of defiled persons with the ashes of a heifer sanctify for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purifying our conscience from dead works to serve the living God. Yeah, I think, that's I think the main point that I wanted to say. But I'll just pray. Yeah, Lord, I thank you that we can look back at the Old Testament, we can look back at the tabernacle and how incredibly genius you are in creating such a construct that is just foreshadowing Jesus. And I think we can look back at that and really see ourselves and be thankful that maybe we don't have to do all of these daily rituals every day because of you, Jesus. And we just thank you, Jesus, that you became the sacrificial lamb. You tore the veil, and we have access into your presence. We have access into your holy presence, and we can approach you boldly and confidently, knowing that we are forgiven, knowing that we are loved by you. I just pray that we would grow in relationship with you more, God, and would you meet us in our worship? Would you, Holy Spirit, would you come and fill our minds and fill our hearts? And we want to make room for you, God, in our hearts. We want to make room for you. So I pray that we would, open ourselves. Let us be moldable. Let us be teachable in our daily life, but also in our worship, God, because we're still learning and we're still figuring it out.